We are celebrating today, Podsters. And you know what we're celebrating? We're celebrating you. You and me, but mostly you. And 100 episodes. Today is the 100th episode of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. I could not possibly be more excited. In fact, I had a whole thing planned with Cool and the Gang and celebrate good times. Come on. But my rule follower, podcast producer Jen would not let me do that because apparently there's some copyright infringement involved there. So, anyway, we are at episode 100. And today's episode is a love letter to you all from me. And I'm going to share 100 life lessons, battle tested by yours truly, so that we all can learn from my mistakes and you can not do what I did in some cases, do what I did in some cases, nod your head along in some cases, have an aha moment, I hope. And that's what we're going to do. Today, we're going to do our top 50. And then next week, we're going to do the other 50. So let's get to it. Are you ready to speak up, stand out, and get your seat at the table? If so, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unmute Yourself, the podcast where you'll get real-life anecdotes and actionable tools for you to step into your strengths, debunk imposter syndrome, truly know your worth, and show up like you own the room every time. I'm your host, Nancy Medoff, who did the thing and followed my passion for empowering women like you to unleash that inner spark and become who you know you are meant to be. I'm a diehard foodie with a raging Skittles habit who will not stop until women everywhere unmute themselves and truly thrive at work, at home, or wherever you may be. Let's do this. It is our 100th episode, Podsters, and I'm just going to dive right in with 100 life lessons, battle tested by me. And today we're going to talk about the first 50. I might have said the top 50 in the intro, but actually it's the first 50. Speaking of 50, want to let you all know that we are now in 54 countries. First of all, I'm not even sure I knew there were 54 countries. I did. I'm kidding. But I remember when I was excited about 11. So thank you to this incredible community. It is sharing, posting, tagging, talking, all the things. Thank you all so much. I'm truly, sounds cliche, but I'm very humbled and also pretty darn excited. So let's jump in. 100 life lessons battle tested by me. Most of these are mine. Some are what I learned from other people. And when possible, I will give them credit. Here we go. Number 1, you will not be surprised by this. Words matter. Here's what I mean by this. Obviously, we care a lot about words over here at Unmute Yourself, the podcast. Words matter. Words matter and you can't take them back. So choose your words wisely. Words matter. And most of all, the words that you use with yourself. So think about how you might talk to yourself when you're down on yourself, which happens to all of us. I don't care who you are. Everyone gets down on themselves. I have to catch myself many, many times per day or many, many times a week. So words matter. And when you use words that don't serve you, you are giving away your power and you are creating your own destiny. So think very carefully about the words you use. Number 2. Not everything deserves a reaction. I love that. And I wish that I could do that even more. Energy vampires, toxic bosses, family members, situations, heat of the moment situations, not everything deserves a reaction. And there is nothing for me more powerful than the non-reaction. That's like, it's the ultimate. It is the ultimate. Number 3. The wonder in exploring a new place is irreplaceable. And if you add in another culture, it's a life changer. I am a huge proponent of travel. I love the term wanderlust. If you have not heard this before, it's a great term and it applies to me and many other people I know who like to wander. There is nothing I love more than going to a country I'm not familiar with, meeting people that their culture is new to me, trying new foods, hearing different languages, experiencing and immersing myself in other cultures. The wonder of exploring a new place is irreplaceable. And if you do not have the means to travel to, Thailand or Costa Rica or Brazil, for all of our fans that are listening in Brazil, Canada, everywhere, all of you, the Middle East, Africa, we have people everywhere. If you don't have the means to do that, explore your backyard, explore a new grocery store, explore a new anything, and take a different path to work. By the way, neurologically proven to improve your brain function is taking different paths to work. So anyway, I digress. Number 4, salt air or ocean air is scientifically proven to improve your mood. That is not true. It is not scientifically proven to boost your mood, but it does. Battle tested by me. There is nothing more soothing to many people than salt or sea air. So whenever possible, try to get outside and get some of that air on your face. Number 5, this is one of my favorites. This one I did invent. Who you are is not who you will always be. And what I mean by that, Podsters, is you get to decide what your brand looks like. You get to decide who you are. And if you have always been known as one way and you would like to be known as another way, you get to choose this. You can curate your own brand. You curate how you are perceived. You curate what are your core values. You get to decide who you are. And who you were told you were as a kid, who you were told you were as a boss, if that's not who you want to be, you get to change that, and you get to change it today. You get to decide who you are. Okay. Number 6. This is a good one. People make mistakes. Be quick to forgive. I'm just going to leave that one there. I like that one a lot. Number 7. People will rise to the occasion if given the opportunity. I would love to take credit for this one, but I can't. I remember I attended a conference. It was in Washington, D.C. It was a travel conference, and a former IBM chairman, I will find his name and come back at the next episode and share that with you. Actually, you know what? I'm going to look it up right now, Podsters. Okay, Podsters, I found it in like a second. It was Lou Gertzner. He was CEO of IBM from 1993 to 2002. What an honor to get to see him. I didn't realize that he was there that long. That's incredible. During some of their largest growth. By the way, FYI, Ginny Rometty, female chair of IBM, just saying, for 8 years. Anyway, Lou Gertzner, and what he said was, somebody asked him, what's one of the biggest life lessons you've learned? And he said, people will rise to the occasion if given the opportunity. And I remember thinking to myself, so this was probably legit 15 years ago. And I remember I know exactly where I was. I know what he was wearing. I remember. Think about what a positive outlook that is on people, and on if you're a leader, think about that mindset in leading your people. They will rise to the occasion if given the opportunity. I think that is a beautiful way to look at the world. So thank you, Mr. Gertzner. Number 7, trust your instincts. You always know what to do. I'm going to give you an example, and I really like this example. So many years ago, I was working full time, and I had a senior leadership position, and I wanted to get my MBA. And I don't know why I wanted to get my MBA. I just did. Like I like to learn. I wanted to get an MBA, and I wasn't doing it. There was no Machiavellian anything. I wanted a master's degree in business. I wanted to learn about the next level of business. I wanted that degree. I didn't think, it was going to go get me, positioned better or anything like that. I knew in my heart I wanted to do it. So I did. And I remember one of my colleagues at the time, it came back to me. She didn't say it to my face, of course, but it came back to me, and she had said, well, I don't know why Nancy's going to do that. Why is she getting her MBA? I hope she doesn't think that that's going to get her a promotion. And I hope that doesn't think that's going to give her the leg up on anybody else. Blah, blah, blah. And I remember thinking to myself, that's pretty sad that somebody thinks like that, because the only reason I wanted to do it was because I wanted to do it. I was interested. So I did. And fast forward a few years later, I wanted to teach, and I wanted to teach at Johnson & Wales University in Rhode Island. And I remember I was there guest lecturing once, and the woman that I was speaking with, Katie, if you're listening, hello. I said, well, how would I go about getting a position as a lecturer here? She said, well, unfortunately, you have to have an advanced degree. And I said, you mean like does it have to be a teaching degree? And she said, no, you just need a graduate degree. And I said, well, I have one. And she broke out in a big smile. She said, you do? I said, yeah, I have an MBA. Boom. I taught the next semester. And that actually launched a very long and successful teaching career. I taught at Johnson and Wales for several years. And then I taught at Boston University for almost 10 years. Trust your instincts. I mean, your instincts always know what to do. This is a tactical example. All of this is to say that you know what to do. Number 9, I want you to lean in here, Podsters, because this one, I think I might need to get bumper stickers made about this. You get to decide who and what gets your energy. And if you're wrapped around the axle about something, I say it with kindness, whose fault is that? You get to decide who gets your energy. That's it. And I think we all know that, but the minute that we can tap into that and catch ourselves before we wreck ourselves, I'm going to try to say this every episode, just so you know. But the minute we can tap into that and take a step back from whatever might be taking up our energy, people, places, things, thoughts, whatever, think about how much better your life could be. Think about how much more productive your life could be. So you get to decide. Number 10. Oh, I like this one. So what I wrote down was Steve Jobs' example. I love this. So if you have not listened to the commencement speech that was given by Steve Jobs, I think it was at Stanford, I will link it in the show notes. It's pretty remarkable. So what he says in a nutshell, and this is me paraphrasing Steve Jobs, so take that disclaimer for what it's worth. He says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So trust that whatever it is that you're doing, there's a reason. And you might not know the reason immediately. You might not, the MBA example is a great example. I just knew I wanted to do it. I could not have possibly seen forward that many years and realized why it would come in handy. Steve Jobs was not a great student, and he was observing. I forget what the word is when you're not enrolled in the class. You kind of observe it. I forget the word. A calligraphy class. And that's how his concept of fonts were born, because he was in this calligraphy class. He didn't know that, and he did not invent fonts. Somebody very kindly educated me to that recently. But his version of fonts and Apple and all the fonts that came with Apple, that's how those were born. So trust your instincts and trust that if there's something driving you to do something, it will become clear eventually. You can't connect the dots looking forward. I love that speech. Number 11. This also was not me. This was the beautifully poetic Maya Angelou. People will tell you who they are. Believe them. Believe them. How much strife and heartache and disappointment could we all avoid if we believed people when they show you who they are? I think, oftentimes we want to believe people are who they aren't, or people will behave differently, and they don't. And we get frustrated, and just believe them. Believe them. Okay. Oh, number 12. This one was just used with me last week. Jennifer, you know who you are. So I delivered a keynote last week to just a phenomenal group. This was incredibly rewarding. So hello, everyone at Lewis Brisbois. And I got a call afterwards. It was one of the planners, or one of the people that facilitated, or one of the people that planned this particular event. And she left me a message, or it might have been on the phone. And she said, you had a butterfly effect. So if you have not heard of the butterfly effect, I know I'm not going to give it justice, but there's a theory that a butterfly will flap its wings on one side of the world. And by the time that tiny, small movement makes it to the other side of the hemisphere, there's a tidal wave, or there's a tsunami, or there's a massive windstorm, or whatever you want to say. So the message is the smallest thing that you do has a ripple effect that can be felt around the world. And I just think that is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful concept. And I'm going to get choked up. That concept being you. Woo, all right, Podsters, we had a moment there. That concept, the butterfly effect concept, being used unprompted, unsolicited, to describe something that I do, and that I do with this work, this Unmute Yourself work, empowering women to advocate for themselves. That is the greatest compliment. And not only do I think it's important that we all know that, you just heard the value in telling that to someone if they've had that effect, or if you see that happening with the work someone does. So thank you to the person that said that to me. It was beautiful. Okay. Number 13, the only one responsible for managing your energy is you. That might be a dupe. I don't know, Podsters. Do we think that's a dupe? No, nope, it's not a dupe. No, it's not a dupe. You're responsible for managing your energy. So if you want to go all in, head first and give all your energy to one thing, understand that something else is going to get less energy. So managing your energy, as we all know from some of my very special guest stars, is critical to your success and your abundance and living a healthy life and thriving. So the only one responsible for managing your energy is you. Oh, great segue to number 14. No one is going to tap you on the shoulder and tell you when it's time to stop working. No one's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, you know what, it's 5 o'clock. You really should go home. You are responsible for your boundaries. You are responsible for when you work. You are responsible for the choices that you make. It's up to you. I was asked this question in one of my first speaking gigs 20 years ago. Someone asked me about work-life balance, and you're responsible for that. You cannot blame your boss. You cannot blame your colleagues. You're the one that's deciding when, how, with whom, and where you work and how you work. We need to be responsible for telling ourselves when it's time to wrap up for the day, myself included, by the way. Number 15, you get what you ask for. Now, because words matter, I would say you get what you negotiate. And at the same time, it's not always a negotiation. It could simply be an ask. But if you don't ask, you don't get, is really what we're saying, or what I'm saying. Number 16, this is interesting. New people in your life don't have to like you. And what I mean by that is, we have to constantly work to rebuild our brand and our credibility. Sometimes I forget that people don't know me. New people don't know me. Sometimes I forget that new people don't understand that sometimes I can be a little sarcastic, that sometimes I might get all, activated about something, but I'm not, I'm just passionate. And new people, you don't have the deposits in the Stephen Covey bank, and I'll talk about that in a second, with new people. So sometimes you have to consistently work to rebuild your brand and your credibility. What I mean by the Covey bank, if you haven't read, and most of you probably haven't, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I think that's the one that it's in. He wrote a bunch of books. What he talks about is doing good things for other people, and it's like a bank account. It's like a deposit. So if you consistently treat someone with respect and kindness and put good deposits in that bank, they can cut you a little slack on the rare occasions when you don't. The key here is that you have that credibility and that trust and that those deposits built in to that bank account. So new people don't have to like you. Number 17, very timely with spring cleaning. If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it, period. Get rid of it. People, places, processes, situations. And if you can, eliminate it altogether. If you can't, some people that don't bring you joy, you simply cannot avoid them. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people about, it's very easy to say, let go of these people if they no longer serve you, which is something that I've been known to say. Sometimes you can't. You can't walk away from people that you are legally required to talk to, or, you can't walk away from people if it's your family or whatever the case may be. Sometimes you can't walk away from your boss, whatever the case may be. If you can't get rid of it, give it less energy. Just don't. Brenda Johnston, who I think I talk about every day on this episode, so Brenda, you're welcome, talks about observe, don't absorb. And if it doesn't bring you joy and you can't extricate yourself from the situation, just observe it. You don't have to let it get into you, into your skin or your pores or your brain. Just observe it. It's fine. It's actually incredibly powerful. 18, grace always wins. Just going to leave that there. Number 19, meditation is not woo-woo. I used a different word, but I didn't want to swear on the podcast. So when I say meditation, I don't mean sitting down and channeling your inner goddess and finding the divine moment where you become at one with the world. There is a ton of value to that, and I'm envious of people who can do that. Talking about taking maybe a minute, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes of just sitting or standing or putting your feet on the ground, literally on the ground, on the earth, or sitting in the sun. I went for a walk today and I stopped in the street. The sun's out, which it hasn't been in like 2 weeks, and just turned my face up to the sun. And it felt incredible. It just that moment of warmth and light and vitamin D felt so good. That was my meditation for today. So if you can, just find a minute to just be, to just be, to just be. Number 20. This kind of goes back to number 17. If you're dealing with a toxic person or a toxic situation, you always have the opportunity to walk away, or if you can't walk away, detach. So that's observe versus absorb. So I owe you one extra Podsters in the next episode. Oh, I love this one. Number 21. Some jobs are vehicles, some jobs are destinations. Also, another CEO. So I used to call on Abbott Laboratories out in Chicago, Illinois, or a suburb of Chicago. And I was attending a speech, and the CEO, his name was Miles White, I remember. And he talked about not all jobs, some jobs are vehicles, some are destinations. So some of the jobs that you pursue or take or you're in, they are a vehicle to get you somewhere else. Some of the jobs are where you're supposed to be, maybe not forever, but if you're in your destination job, if this is where you're supposed to be or where you want it to be, great. You don't have to think about the next job right now. You can just enjoy it. You can do the best that you can in this job. Enjoy the beauty in being in what you've always wanted. Some jobs are vehicles, some are destinations. Oh, which brings me to 22. Once you've gone as far as you want to go, it's okay to pause and reevaluate. This one, been having this conversation with a lot of people lately, particularly women, not only women, but particularly women. So once you've taken, let's say you always wanted to be a VP, and I'm just using that because that's common. Or let's say you've always wanted to own your own business and be making 6 figures a year. Okay. When you get to that situation, it's okay to pause. Frankly, I would argue it's okay to coast for a little while. It's okay to enjoy being where you wanted to be, getting to that place you wanted to be at, and just breathing for a minute. You don't always have to be thinking about what's next. We're raised in corporate America to always be climbing the ladder and always be thinking about what's next. And I got this job. I'm a VP. Now, how do I get to be an SVP? I'm an SVP. How do I get to be the next level SVP? How do I get to be C-level? How do I get to do this? How do I get to go lead that team? How can I make my team bigger? It's okay to pause and enjoy where you're at. I actually have a friend who is always, 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 always thinking about her next job. And I love that about her. And at the same time, I'm like, girl, just chill. You're very good at what you do. You've built a great team. Coast for a little while. It's okay. I'm not saying phone it in. I'm saying when I say coast, I mean, rest on your laurels, take a breath. You know, you're going to jump right back into that shark tank again and just reevaluate it. Do you want to keep climbing the ladder? Do you like where you are? Do you want to make a lateral move? Do you want to change industries? Do you want to just do what you're doing and not climb any further? I remember in my career when I started noticing that all these job promotions and opportunities were coming across my desk, not that I was being solicited for them, but that, you know, there was opportunities and I wasn't interested in them, any of them. And that's when I realized that it was time to make a change. So it's okay. It's okay. It's all good. Okay. Well, all right. You don't always have to be going for the next thing. That was number 23. Number 24. Oh, this is a good one. It is really important in your life to know where you want to go. Not all the time. The irony that I just said, sometimes it's okay to pause. It is. When you are ready, you need to know where you want to be and where you want to go. What is it that you want to be doing? Not what's the job that you want, not what's the title that you want, but how do you want to be spending your days? How do you want to be living your life? Think about it like a GPS. You can't just get into the car and say to the GPS, okay, take me to ice cream. If you want to go to have ice cream, which ice cream store? Where? How can it give you directions if it doesn't know where it wants to go? So it's important when you're thinking about your career or you're mapping your career or you are in your career that you know where you want to go. Because if you don't, you're just you might make a wrong turn. You might drive in circles. I mean, think about that analogy. You need to know where you're going. All right. Oh, this one's one of my favorites. Number 25, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation. That was a quote from the famous Don Draper from Mad Men. Okay. So what I mean by that is now at the time, Don was a fictional advertising executive. And something very bad was happening with the company he was representing. And he's like, listen, if you don't like what's being said, let's just change the conversation, like redirect, talk about something else, say it differently. I have said this with the term male dominated. Why are we saying male dominated? Why do we keep saying that? Why do women keep saying that? How about underrepresented by females? How about, I can't tell you how many people say I work in a male dominated industry, male dominated industry, male dominated. I work in an industry that's underrepresented by female. Or I work in an industry where there's not enough women, or I work in an industry that's disproportionately male. How about that? Disproportionately male. I'm writing that down, Podsters. Disproportionately male. Okay. So change the conversation. Subtle nuances and changes to your words will have a massive ripple effect. So what I mean by that is when you consciously make a decision to change how you're saying something, eventually it will be part of your vocabulary. And eventually it will be simply how you speak, which will be how you think, which will be how you feel, which will be how you act. So when you think about the words that you're using, if you power up your vocabulary, and I'm actually going to put a link in the show notes. I have a say this, not that. It's a worksheet. And you can download it. It's yours for the taking. And if you start using some of these phrases, it's going to have a ripple effect. It's going to have a ripple effect on how you carry yourself. You're going to raise your executive presence. So subtle changes to the words that you use will make a huge impact. 27, you're not responsible for other people's behavior. I love this. I'll never forget when I first heard this. This was actually Beth Knaus, the original co-founder of Unmute Yourself, the podcast. And we were talking about someone in her family, and she very casually said, well, I'm not responsible for that. And I was like, wow, I was blown away. Think about it. If your partner acts like a doofus, you're not responsible for that. People, hopefully people won't judge you. And if they do, they do. But at the end of the day, you're not responsible for how someone else behaves. Your children to a certain extent when they're very young, but when they grow up, you're not responsible for that. You're not responsible for how other people behave. So cut yourself some slack. Change your thoughts, change your life. I love this. Thoughts inform behaviors. Behaviors inform actions. Actions impact outcomes. So I'm not saying that you can run around thinking that you're, I don't know. I like to say Kate Moss, but that dates me. You can run around. You can run around thinking that you dance like Britney Spears. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you think it, eventually you can become it. And there's all kinds of empirical scientific data which shows that. It shows confirmation bias, which is number 29. Confirmation bias means that your subconscious will bring in data, people, situations, justification for what you think. So if it's in your brain let's say it's in your brain that the sky is pink, confirmation bias will subconsciously seek out reinforcement that the sky is pink. It might seek out sunsets where the sky gets pink. It might seek out paintings where the sky is pink. So all of these different supporting facts and data will show up in your life. So if you think you can, there's an expression, if you think you can't or you can't, you're right. That's confirmation bias in a nutshell. Okay, number 30. Anything that you half-ass will appear half-assed. So what I mean by that is there's an old expression that any job worth doing is worth doing well. I agree with that. And I'd like to take it a little bit further in that if you are phoning it in your career, or if you are in a relationship that isn't working for you, if you are living a life that isn't the life you're supposed to be living, if you're half-assing your life, it's going to show up. It's going to show up in how you feel, in how you present yourself, in your relationships, in your health. So make sure that whatever you're in you're in it. Whatever you're in, you're in. How's that for words, Podsters? Okay. Number 31, women are much more powerful when we support each other. Number 32, work-life balance is nonsense. You know it, I know it. Let's stop trying to chase it and instead embrace work-life blending. And if you are not familiar with the concept of work-life blending, it's all over my book. It's all over my Instagram. What I mean is you blend. You work when it suits you and you don't work when it suits you. And sometimes that means you work on a Saturday morning. I'm recording this podcast on a Sunday afternoon. When I was working in the corporate world, no way would I work on a Sunday afternoon. But you know what? I had a lot of time this week that was not productive time during work hours. So I'm making up for it on a Sunday. Big deal. It works for me. I'm going to bang it out and move on. And I'll be happier. I'll be less stressed and everybody does better. Okay. Oh, this is a big one. Number 33. That's a new situation. In the middle of a sentence, my computer died. So let's see what kind of magic Jen can work out there. We were on number 33. Oh yeah. I think this might have been a sign from someone telling me not to say it. I'm hired oftentimes by companies, large companies, to speak to their groups. And I say this knowing that I might be shooting myself in the foot. And at the same time, I think this is important. Your company does not always have your best interests at heart. And here's what I mean by that. That actually just pained me to say that. So you could work for the best company in the world, and I hope you do. Most companies they look out for their employees. And I'm not saying that they don't look out for you, but what I'm saying is at the end of the day, I'm not saying they don't look out for you. And also what I'm saying is at the end of the day, you have to look out for you. And we have all heard stories of, people being laid off with it coming from nowhere. And I'm not saying that that's going to happen to you. We've heard stories of companies, shuttering their doors without a lot of notice. At the end of the day, the company is a corporation. The company does not have a brain. The company does not have a soul. The company does not have a heart. The employees that work there do. Your bosses do. The leadership team does. The board does. At the end of the day, remember that you have to look out for you. Hopefully the company that you're with will do right by you. And I'm not saying that companies are bad. I'm saying that at the end of the day, it's a business and it's a company. And the only one responsible for you is you. Okay. Now that I've just alienated anyone who might hire me for their groups. Okay. Number 34, feelings are not facts. And we've been through this. We've been through this a lot with imposter syndrome. It's not a syndrome. It's a feeling, and feelings aren't facts. So if you're having a feeling and it's not a feeling that's serving you, you can talk to yourself and say, okay, this is a feeling. It's not a fact. I'm not saying that you don't recognize the feeling. I'm not saying that you don't agree with the feeling. It could be a very valid feeling. It is not a fact. And acting on it as a fact is where we get ourselves into trouble. It's a feeling. You're allowed to have it. Doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean it's going to change an outcome. It just means it's a feeling. Okay, it's a feeling. Bless and release. Okay. Number 35. Yeah, I think next week I'm going to have only positive ones. Number 35, women are judged differently. This is a fact. We can be upset about it. We can be frustrated by it. We as women can get angry about it. At the end of the day, there's not a lot we can do about it. So until that changes, we need to understand that women are judged differently. So sometimes we have to approach a situation differently than one of our male colleagues would. That is simply the facts. And, I have this slide that I use when I'm working with groups, and it's a room full of men with one tiny little woman. A room full of men in power suits with this one tiny little woman, and she's kind of looking up at all the men. And the title on the slide says, "Why are we surprised?" So, particularly if you work in an industry that is overrepresented by men and underrepresented by women, you're probably going to be the only female in the room. So we can be frustrated about it. We can stomp our feet about it. We can be bitter about it, or we can understand the situation and work the situation. So if you know that you're going to be the only woman in the room, and in the past you've been spoken over in these meetings where there's only men, pull one of your male colleagues aside and say, "Hey, Mike, I could really use your help. I noticed I can't get a word in edgewise at these meetings, and that's not really fair, nor is it really fair to the group because I have things to say that add value. So it would be really helpful for me if you ask me my opinion, because you're already at the table, Mike. You already have the ear of the meeting leaders. So I'm going to need you to pass the baton over to me." Do you think you can do that? I mean, you might say it a little nicer, but only because I say it so much and I say it all the time when I'm training people. So you can be surprised, but you can't be surprised. We can't be surprised anymore because we've all been around and we know how this is. So I'm not saying to give up. I'm not saying to acquiesce. I'm not saying to try to toughen up and act like a man. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying we're judged differently. And if you've read the book, Unmute Yourself, I give some pretty good examples where it just is. And knowing that and managing that is how you will continue to speak up and stand out. I'm going to leave that there. Number 36, you must ask for the job in any interview situation. So many times people will go for a job they will hire me to help them interview for a job as part of what I do. And I'll say, okay, so how are you going to ask for the job? And they'll say, okay, well, I'm going to say, can you tell me about next steps? So let's play this out, Podsters. You're at a job interview and you say, can you tell me about next steps? And the interviewer says, oh, absolutely. Yep. We have 750 other people that we're going to interview. And then we're going to look at all those resumes. And then we're going to get together as a team. And then we're going to meet on Zoom 3 or 4 times. And then we're going to make our decision. How does that help you? Doesn't help you. First of all, you didn't ask for the job. You didn't say, I would like this job. You didn't reinforce why you're the best candidate for the job. You didn't show them how great you would be in the job. You asked what the next steps were. That's different. So you must ask for the job. So glad we talked today. One of my goals today was to demonstrate to you why these 3 qualities, 1, 2, 3, support me as the best candidate for the role. And I'd like to ask for your support. Can I ask for your support? May I ask for your endorsement? Is there anything holding you back from endorsing me as the ideal candidate for this job? However you want to say it. I have tons of ways to say it in the book. So you have to ask for the job. I'm going to give you a real life example. So many of you may know that I'm running for select board in my town. This is a select board for those of you who are outside the US or live in a larger town. It's like a councilman. There's five members of the select board, and they set policy for the town. There's no mayor. It's a select board. That's what they do. And I have to ask people for their vote when I meet with them. I say, I hope I can earn your vote. Is there anything we talked about today that would make you hesitate from voting for me? Let's talk about it. Great. I hope I've earned your vote. Have I earned your vote? May I ask for your vote? May I ask for you to share with your friends why you think I'd be a great candidate to help lead this town? So whatever the case may be, you have to ask for the support. You have to. Okay. What else do I have? This is a good one. 37, it is no longer optional to throw down the rope. So if you are not doing everything that you can to help the women that come behind you, I have a problem with that. And you know what, if you're listening to this podcast, you're a good person. And I know that you're helping the women behind you. I think what's important is that it's not optional. We can't, I have a friend that got a very big promotion. And I remember she walked into a meeting, or she was talking to me after some meetings, and she said, gosh, it's amazing. The men really do talk over the women in these meetings. And I said to her, well, what'd you do about it? She said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what'd you do about it? You're the senior leader. It's your meeting. You let all these women continue to be talked over? There's a ton you could have done. A, you can talk to the guys. B, you can pull the women aside and say, hey, I noticed you don't speak up in the meetings. You have very valuable things to say. I'd like you to speak up. I need you to speak up. You can pull the men aside who are talking over the women, most of the time inadvertently, and say, hey, Mike, I noticed that when Jessica speaks, sometimes you talk over her and she doesn't get to say what she'd like to say. I'm going to ask you to make sure that you're waiting for her to speak before you jump in. Whatever. It's no longer optional to throw down the rope. Have to. Okay. The person with the most unrealistic expectations is a Podsters drum roll, you and me. We have incredibly high expectations on ourselves. I just had this conversation with someone today. He's launching a business. He wants everything to go out tomorrow. He's not feeling well. He's been sick. And I said, so is there a deadline? Like, what's this deadline? Is it arbitrary? He said, yeah, it's the deadline I gave myself. I go, great, push it back a week. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, push it back. Like, what? Why do you have this expectation? You're not feeling well. You haven't felt well. You're not in business for yourself to beat yourself up and to work 12-hour days and to have unrealistic expectations. Like, why do we do this? Why do we think we have to be perfect? Where's the perfectionism? Where does it come from? And let's break the cycle. You know what? Sometimes I don't make dinner. Sometimes I actually had a health coach. You know who you are. I'm not going to mention your name. She does listen to this podcast. Sometimes she would eat candy for dinner. And I'm like, you know what? That was the most freeing thing that she had ever said to me. Sometimes she eats candy for dinner. Okay. If her expectations were that she was a health coach and she always ate well-balanced meals and meal prepped and, had all the fiber and had all the protein and had all the, like, okay, so we lose the expectations. Nobody wins. No one wins. Number 39, sometimes done is better than perfect. Thank you, Sheryl Sandberg. Game changer for me. I'm just going to leave it there. Sometimes done is better than perfect. Number 40, if you wait for the right time, you might be waiting forever. So this is having kids. This is buying the house you can't afford. This is going for the job that you don't think you're qualified for, starting your side hustle, changing your side hustle, moving to Thailand, going to Thailand, painting the house, whatever. If you, of course, there's the right time for things, but if it's big, and if you keep putting it off because you're waiting for the right time, you're not going to do it. And I see this so often. When I talk to a one-on-one coaching client, I know the second I talk to them if they're gonna invest in themselves, if they're gonna actually walk the talk. Which is why I have an application process, and it's fascinating. The few times I can count them on, once or twice, I have skipped the application process and the person wasn't ready. So they were waiting for the right time and they were hesitating. And when it's your time. And if you feel it's your time and you keep putting it off, you're never going to do it. So do it. Do the thing. Do the thing. Number 41, physical self-care is underrated. I slept 11 hours last night. 11 hours. That's a lot. I've been saying that a lot lately, actually. I talked about that on our burnout episode. So physical self-care could be drinking water. It could be eating healthy. It could be, maybe indulging in the cookie if you want, or whatever the case may be. It could be getting sunlight on your face. It could be having tea, meditating, taking a nap, reading a book, whatever that physical self-care is, whatever you need to do physically. It's when we don't do it that we get ourselves into trouble. So take the nap, drink the tea, eat the fruit, whatever the case may be. Number 42. Oh, I love this one. 42. No one ever got in trouble by taking the high road. Just going to leave that there. 43. Busy is not a badge of honor. Sometimes busy is really hiding. Sometimes being busy means that you're hiding. And, I think most of our community here probably already knows this. And I'm going to say it because we still might find ourselves in this situation. If you're seeing yourself running around, busy, 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 not a lot of time. I mean, sometimes it's situational, right? We just get ourselves in these situations. But, if you find yourself running around and busy, 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 what are you avoiding? Would be my question. Okay. 44. Oh, I love this one. Sometimes if it's quiet and it's still and you're outside, you can hear the snow falling. And it's amazing. 45. The only one responsible for your confidence is you. So we can blame our parents, we can blame our upbringing, we can blame our older sister, our older brother, or the childhood bully, or our ex-husband, or our ex-partner. And yes, all of these people have an impact on our self-worth. At the end of the day, the only one responsible for your confidence is you. Oh, great segue. 46, you can only blame your past for so long. Eventually, you have to take responsibility for your behavior, your beliefs, and your actions. You have the choice and the chance to repeat a cycle or to break it. And I'm not going to get big and deep and, philosophical and psychological. What I want to make sure I'm communicating here is that You can break a pattern of behavior. If there's a pattern of behavior that you don't like and that you see, you can break it. You can break it. Number 47, kindness is king. I'm going to leave that there. Number 48, energy vampires cannot survive without your attention. Your attention is their fuel and their food. So this goes back to the other conversation about people who are toxic. Observe, don't absorb. Again, Brenda Johnson gets credit for that one. Okay, here's number 50. I'm going to leave you with this one, and you can interpret it however you'd like. When you know, you know. That's it, Podsters. That was either 50 or 49. Might have been 49. I will do a makeup life lesson tomorrow or during our next episode. 100 episodes, 54 countries, 10,000 downloads, millions of listeners. All right, I'm not at millions yet, but I appreciate every single one of you. Speaking of which, I would like to give a huge shout out to the women and men who support this podcast and my business. Ready? I'm going to list them all out. Miranda, Lindsay, Lana, Jen, Sam, and team. So this is Sam, Cecilia, and Elizabeth. Noelle, Chuck, or Chuck. Is Chuck the only male? He might be. All the coaches that I've worked with, you know who you are. And all of my friends, I can't list them out. I'm just so popular. I'm only kidding. I started to list out some of my friends, and then my tribe, my board of directors. And I said, you know what, I'm going to miss someone. So you know who you are. I'm incredibly grateful. 100 episodes. I am so proud of the work we do here. Podsters, peace out. I will catch you next week. That's a wrap, Podsters. And before we go, I ask you, what's one thing from today's episode that you will use this week to unmute yourself? DM me, email me, send a smoke signal, whatever you need to do. Let me know what you're going to do differently. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone you know and leave a 5-star review on Apple. This helps me spread our message of empowerment to more people worldwide. Let's do this.